I have this question about the degree in which our lifestyle, healthy or not, impacts our happiness, but also I have a question about how our happiness impacts our health and our lifestyle. I want to solve this paradox so that I can figure out which one is the cause and which one is the effect. And if there are such things in this equation, I feel it's important to find out so that we can take action around the cause to create more amazing effects in our life. Hello and welcome to the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagner. I'm your host, Jack Wagner, and here we talk about how to build, create, share, and just find the gratefulness that's in your life and how to bring it to your everyday life to just feel happier, healthier, and better overall. When you're grateful for something, I truly believe that just increases the quality of your life and how you're feeling with yourself. So that is my mission with this podcast. Hey, and welcome back to episode 12 of the Grateful Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Wagner, and I'm excited to be making this podcast today. I've highlighted in previous podcasts how I kind of feel uncomfortable, sitting here and preaching you guys information based on my perspective, because I believe that we should always question our source, and I'm not necessarily, I'm no God figure that can just preaching you guys, And today, I'm excited to do something different than just preach information. Today's episode is going to be very based on a question I had when I was reading some different research papers the other day. I was reading and I found these contradicting points. Well, I guess not so contradictory, just like opposite points, And they're about the cause and effect of happiness and lifestyle. And I question the order in which it works. So then I said to myself, if I have this question, I bet others do too. And so I decided to do some research to find a solution. Then I can make a podcast about it, because I think this would be very interesting for everyone. And so, it's so interesting how something can be the cause of something, like the reciprocal thing. It's just weird how that works. But before I get into it, you regulars already know what's coming before I have to start. And before I start, I have to say what I'm grateful for today. So today I'm grateful. Let's see. I think the main thing I'm feeling right now is it's the vacation. So yes, because I'm pretty tired and got the vacation. It's going to be awesome. Weather's getting great. Just grateful for some external factors like that. Going to give me more time to just relax, reset, and I don't know, maybe not necessarily relax, but just put effort into what I need time to put effort into as well. I'm also grateful for my drive to just stay fit, even when it can be hard. For example, eating French meals, because I have the drive to be healthy and feel good for my body, and so therefore I do things that relate to that, that correlate to that, even if sometimes it's not what I want, right? It's cool, and I'm grateful for it. For example, it was Easter the other day in France, and we ate just 4 hours of food. Just 4 hours of stuffing our mouths, finished off by a bunch of cake and chocolate. And I'm just wow, that does not feel good. So I wait a few hours and I just go for a run. It tasted so good though. I was grateful for that food in the moment too. All right, so onto the podcast. We're going to start off with this quote by Thomas Jefferson, TJ1. I'm going to give him a name like that. I hope you all know who this is if you're American. If not, that's okay. He's a founding father of the U.S. and not a man to base your lifestyle of, I think we can say. But he did some intelligent things and said some intelligent things as well, even if they weren't necessarily backed up by action. But we can just use the intelligent things he said because they still have value. Anyways, his quote goes, "Without health, there is not happiness. And attention to health, then, should take the place of every other object." I find this to be so interesting, this perspective from the former president, as he seems to believe that health is the cause of happiness, right? he answers my question. He therefore says, as I had stated in the intro, that this is what every action should be taken around, because health is what influences like your happiness, right? And this is one of the two sides that I was pointing could be right. And he took that strong stance and therefore said that's what you should base your life around, because it's the cause. So I found this quote after I wrote the intro, so I just think it's super cool how it mirrored my philosophy, or I guess rather how I mirrored his, because it's nearly 2.5 centuries later. Okay, so let's try to find some evidence to back up this claim by Mr. Jefferson. So I did that. After I found that quote, I did some research, and the first study that I found, entitled "The Relationships Between Physical Activity and Life Satisfaction and Happiness Among Young, Middle-Aged, and Older Adults." Take a breath. That's a long title. It was published July 4th of 2020. So one thing I needed to note, it's not noted in the study, but I think it's important to think about, is its COVID context. So we were talking about health and things, and this is COVID context. So we all know how big, just how much value we put on health and stuff during that context. I'm not sure what it could change, but I just thought that was interesting to think about and keep in mind when we read the study. The study, which is linked in the description of this podcast, took 2,345 adults of all age ranges and controlled them into 3 groups divided by age: young, middle-aged, and old. After that, they categorized physical activity with 3 categories as well: high physical activity, moderate, low. This is more like quantity, not necessarily it's quantity and intensity combined. After controlling, so I'm quoting now, after controlling for demographic characteristics, participants with high and moderate activity levels had significantly higher life satisfaction and happiness than those with a low activity level across the total population and the 3 age groups. Age squared was a significant predictor of a positive curve linear between age and life satisfaction and happiness. Physical activity was significantly related to the life satisfaction and happiness in young, middle-aged, and older adults. In addition, life satisfaction and happiness increased with increasing age. The results support the promotion of physical activity. The study goes on to cite the benefits of exercise noted in previous studies, especially on psychological well-being, such as a decreased rate of depression and anxiety, along with increased mood. There are also the obvious physical benefits of exercise, such as weight loss and improved body composition. And then one that they forgot to mention that I would like to is oftentimes exercise is done outside, which exposes you to sunlight, which in turn can elevate your mood. You can see there's so many benefits to exercise alone, which is why I think I'm saying exercise, or before even, my hypothesis was that exercise will be the cause of happiness more than happiness is the cause of exercise. However, contrary to this, in the intro, the study mentioned contradictory results of previous studies that they hope to clear up, saying, however, there are inconsistent findings in different physical activity intensity levels and subjective well-being. A previous study showed that moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity was related to higher quality of life. In contrast, another study showed that healthy adults gain the highest subjective well-being from low-intensity physical activity. The frequency of low and moderate intensity physical activity was related to subjective well-being, but that of high intensity physical activity was not. So, they're still saying it relates to subjective well-being, but they're saying when it's high intensity, it's not related. Sometimes I guess that can be too much. Prospective cohort study showed that the number of days people participated in moderate intensity physical activity was positively related to subjective well-being. However, the time spent on high intensity physical activity was negatively related to subjective well-being. It's unknown whether the total amount of physical activity or a specific physical activity has positive effects on life satisfaction and happiness. I always love reading studies where we can see exactly the type of data that they would like to add to the discussion. And in the end, and I will read again from the study itself, they found exercise or physical activity makes people feel good or happy, and the effects in the study occurred across the lifespan. The total amount of physical activity was more important than the specific type of physical activity, which did not support the findings of the previous study. Overall lifestyle was more important than a single physical activity. Therefore, people should modify their lifestyle. Wow. One, I'm fed up with saying physical activity. My mouth is not doing it well. Two, I found this super interesting because they mentioned lifestyle and not just physical activity, just as I've been talking about at the top. However, the thing that really caught me was this. There's a bidirectional association between physical activity and life satisfaction / happiness. Physical activity was one of the important healthy lifestyles which could improve mental and physical and mental health, and then increase life satisfaction and happiness. On the other hand, happiness might have been a protective factor to health, and people with higher life satisfaction / happiness might participate in more physical activity. Like, are you kidding me right here? Are you kidding me? You just wrote this entire study backing up my claim. I thought that I had found evidence for my answer. Then, of course, I have to give a little rebuttal like that at the end. Although at the end, they still conclude that the results promote physical activity, the last rebuttal got me extremely curious because I thought I had found my evidence. Obviously, you can't just find evidence from one source, but I found it pretty convincing. And then they put that little thing in there. So it's so interesting. Basically, what I took right away from that study is that on like a normal level, physical activity promotes just well-being, happiness, like they said, subjective well-being, but that's what I'm considering happiness, right? But when you push it too far, as with anything, if you become extreme, it's too much and it can lower your subjective well-being. So next study I found, protecting your health. Happiness lowers your risk for cardiovascular diseases, lowers your blood pressure, enables better sleep, improves your diet, allows you to maintain a normal body weight throughout regular exercise, and reduces stress. So that was just like literally the summary I made of this one study. And that's like the evidence for that little rebuttal at the end. Happiness, it's saying, is doing all these things, right? And the one thing that really caught me there was allows you to maintain a normal body weight through regular exercise. So what they're saying is, they're not saying that happiness causes exercise. They're saying that happiness makes it easier for, like, with the regular exercise, for you to have the results you want, right? And it improves your diet, which also helps so much. So basically, I think that all of that is correlated to how much you would exercise. Because if you're exercising a lot and you see zero results, the odds that you're going to quit skyrocket. I mean, that goes with anything. If you're doing something for, like, if you're trying hard at something and you see no results, you're going to quit. That's how quitting works. So next, I then found a study on the exact question I had, but specifically in adolescents, age 13 to 17. This piqued my interest, and I checked it out, and the results showed more of a correlation in the direction of exercise to happiness than the other way around. However, the happiness was more short-term. Okay, but if the happiness was long-term instead of short-term, so this was less often found, but if it was like this, the exercise would end up being more consistent. And I definitely find that this is true. I don't know if I can say in my life because no, I can, because I've had both of them, right? Because if you exercise, let's say you exercise one time, your happiness is like an hour. You're like, yes, I did that. and then like let's say you're not used to it and you get sore and you're like, but it sucked, you forget what that good feeling was. Happiness was just short term, and you're less likely to do it. But if you get long-term happiness and you can remember how good you felt from doing the exercise, you'll do it more consistently. I think that's just like it just works like that. If you feel something, no matter what it is in your life, doesn't have to be exercise, but if you can feel the good effects from it and you realize how good it was for you or how good it made you feel, you're more likely to be consistent in that thing, which is why we have to focus on the positives, be grateful for the things that suck to do sometimes so that we can make them consistent in our lives, make them habits, and then make them something that we do every day. I just really looped that in there, but that's something I got from that little piece of data. All right, another study. It was the smartphone study. And it said that basically the frequency with which people physically move throughout the day, even if that movement is not rigorous exercise, is associated with both physical health and happiness. And the current research reveals that the important connection between physical and psychological processes, indicating that even slight changes in one has consequences for the other. Okay, there's that symbiotic thing I was hoping to find, but also just it takes me back to the start. It continues, the present findings validate the use of the smartphones to passively measure the daily active activities of a diverse cohort of people and pave the way for future research concerned with links between psychological and behavioral processes. Okay, so basically this study was done with smartphones. They just had people track, and the smartphones were just tracking people's movement a day, and then it would ask them questions like, how are you feeling, based on a subjective well-being type quiz thing. And it found, even if people aren't rigorously exercising, if they're just getting up, if they're standing up longer, they're just walking to the bathroom longer, these are examples not cited in the study itself, but similar ones. And if you're just doing more movement, no matter what type it is, you're linked to a better psychological well-being. Which basically just points to me that the body just likes to move, and when we're moving more, we're happier, and when we're just still, we're less happy. Simple as that, which I find so true. In the past, I don't know how long, just in France, I haven't been able to move as much as I would like. And then some weeks I just say, okay, I'm cutting out some other things. I'm just going to move this week. And I'm so happy those weeks, even though I need to be doing some other things. I don't know how to explain the well-being and the presence and all of that. Just everything that makes you feel so good. For me, that comes from moving. And it could also be a personality thing. I know people that hate moving, but I don't think they found the movement that they like as much. And I do think that even if they go for a walk, I definitely see a more lively version of them. So I think movement, being outside, like I added earlier, and all that stuff, it just makes us better. However, what I continue to find throughout, all right, so this last study I just cited, it said that everyone has consequences for the other. So physical and psychological processes, they're so related, where if you change the psychological process, the physical process changes. And if you change the physical process, the psychological process changes, right? It just works like that. They depend on each other. However, what I continue to find throughout numerous more studies, I'm not going to directly cite, is that people with psychological well-being were much more likely to exercise than those who were not happy or didn't have I guess I can say high quality of life, or what they would call a high quality of life. Sorry for my voice. In an article titled "How Happiness Affects Health," it talked about the decreased risk of death and decease. Why would I write death and decease? That being happy brings, and just how being less stressed elevates almost everything we correlate with being positive. So that's another thing. But what gets me what weirded me out about this article is that it talks about all the positives of being happy, right? Like happiness is going to make you exercise. Happiness is going to make you less stressed, more productive, all of these things. But my question is then, how did this person get happy, right? Like, what is happiness? How did this person get happy? Because this person didn't just, like, get happy randomly. Like, there are people like that. Like, I feel lucky enough to be like, my normal setting is a happy, grateful setting, right? But there's so many people that do not have this setting. And so this person isn't just going to be, yeah, I'm happy. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to exercise. Now I'm going to do this. It's not how that works, right? This person must have had to, I'm saying this person, but like people in general in the study, they must have had to do something to get to the point where their subjective well-being was good, which then allowed them to do these things that are good for the subjective well-being. It's the cycle like that. You're not just happy out of nothing. I think that a lot of people, that one thing that I need to make clear is that I think happiness comes from action. Action doesn't come from happiness, right? And I guess that's my whole underlying tone with this, because there's so many people that try to just focus on being happy. They want to be happy. That's one of their main goals. But when you're focusing on that, one, that goal is far away. Like when you have this as a goal, it's something that's outside of you, right? Because you're trying to search for it, but that's basically just saying, oh, yeah, I'm not happy right now. So that's one thing. I don't like having happiness as a goal. The other thing is it's not just going to come. You need to take action to be happy. People will be like, well, yeah, I'll do that when I'm in a good mindset. No, you'll do that to become in a good mindset. So that was my problem with this study. It talked about how happiness has it brings increased chance. It wasn't too in depth, and it also just talked about how happiness affects health positively and affects your mood positively, and affects you being able to do things and hard things positively. But okay, but how did this person get there? They didn't always just do things. That's what they did. They just had to do things, and they probably weren't too happy when they were doing sucky things until they realized, okay, it's okay, and it's making me happy. Then it's just a cycle like that, You can't start somewhere. You can't start with everything. You have to take action to get to this place mentally. So my conclusion is then that it's completely symbiotic, right? My conclusion for this entire podcast, it is that all of this data points to happiness and lifestyle being symbiotic, right? And that's not even contradicting my previous point. If you're happy, you will exercise. That's what every article pointed to. And the other thing that all the data pointed to is that you can exercise to be happy. Obviously, this is very oversimplified, but I do love it because it makes it so simple. The way I think about that is that we just need to start exercising. We will start this process. That's the hardest part. The start of anything is the hardest part. I assure you, it does not get harder than the very start, right? But once you get that habit, you have to keep with it. It will accumulate. Even if it doesn't, it will, because I said it will. Because as I just listened to a very interesting Human Lab podcast about the placebo effect in your brain. Is amazing. Go check it out. But it will. You keep exercising. You make it a habit. It will accumulate. It'll make you feel better. According to these articles. I can't assure you this, but according to these articles, it'll make you feel better. And once you feel better, you'll have even more motivation to keep exercising. And there you go. The cycle is like that. But what I can tell you is you can still break it. So you can exercise a ton. You can get really happy. It'll make you want to exercise more. And then one day you can just stop. Then you stop exercising for a week. Then you lose your motivation because the exercise made you happy and you had to try less hard to go out and exercise. So then it feels way too hard to go out and exercise a week later. And then that's how it stops. So you can't let that happen. With my running, I let that happen. I'm getting it back now, but it's not a fun feeling because this entire podcast points to this point. It gets easier as you keep going because it makes you happier. When you're happier, it makes it easier. Wow. I kind of just figured that out as I said that there. The reason it's so hard at the beginning is because you're not getting those benefits of it making you happier. You don't have those benefits built up. And then they start to build up and you start to get happier and then it becomes easier. Well, I really liked learning that with you guys. I like this format of a podcast where I kind of ask a question. I actually have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm just learning with you. So there we learn together. And I'd be interested to see what you guys took away from the data. I know that I kind of can skew it a little bit because I'm giving all my opinions, but I'd be interested to hear what you guys took away from this, and if you've seen this with other aspects, because although at the beginning I just started talking about lifestyle, it ended up being exercise, right? I did find that diet thing, but that's what just a lot of the studies are pointing to. But if you guys can see this in another area of life, I'd be really interested. I think it works for everything. For example, podcasts, it was hard at first, and then it gets easier as they make you happier. Like, it just works for everything. It accumulates, right? And that accumulation of making you happy means you need to take less effort to go and do the thing. And that thing keeps making you better. And it's just an accumulation. It's why people that have done the most of something are the people that are best at something. It's very rarely that you see someone that's done something 2 times. It's amazing, right? That type of talent, I guess it's out there in some places, but it's just not realistic. And so many people want to have this talent to achieve something right away when it's just not how it works. It's just not how life works. It's just not how things work. You have to do something over and over and over to be able to get good at it, for it to be able to bring you happiness, so that you have to put less effort into it. And the whole entire equation of output and input just gets skewed. So then you can just get better at something so much easier. All right. I hope I didn't talk too fast there. That made sense. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. Go have a great day. Be grateful to be alive. And come back next Monday. Thank you. Love you guys. Bye and stay grateful. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagner. If you like the podcast and would like to support its growth, please consider subscribing to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out my YouTube channel under my name and see all of the positive content that I've put out there. Thank you so much, and I hope to get to see you next week. Love you all. Bye.